There's something most people won't tell you, but I will. You're too available, too often. And the hard truth is, people notice it and they start to take you for granted. Let's unpack that. See, when you're constantly there for someone, always the one who says yes, always the one who picks up, always the one who rearranges your own life to make theirs easier, they stop seeing your time as valuable. Not because they're bad people, but because you've taught them that you'll always show up no matter what. It's not intentional disrespect at first. It's just human nature. When something is always there, we stop appreciating it. Think about it. You don't value air until you can't breathe. You don't think about water until you're thirsty. The same thing happens with people. When you're too available, they stop realizing the effort behind your presence. Let's be clear. I'm not telling you to become cold or distant. This isn't about playing games or acting unavailable to manipulate people. This is about preserving your energy, your peace, and your self-respect. Because if you're always the one reaching out, checking in, showing up, it creates an imbalance. And here's what that does. It builds silent resentment inside you. You start to notice that they don't match your effort. They cancel last minute. They reply when it's convenient for them. They assume you'll adjust to their schedule, not the other way around. And that hurts. It chips away at your self-worth, little by little. But here's the twist. You're not just mad at them. You're mad at yourself for constantly making yourself so available. You're the one who trained them to expect this. That's the hard pill to swallow. You're overgiving because you want to be supportive, but underneath that, you want to be seen. You want to be appreciated. You want to feel like you matter. So you give more. You show up faster. You sacrifice deeper, hoping they'll finally notice. But what happens? They get comfortable, not because they're malicious, but because they've been conditioned to believe you'll never say no. And eventually, when you finally try to set a boundary, they look at you like you're the problem. Why? Because you've disrupted the pattern that made their life easier, even if it was draining yours. Being too available makes people forget you have a life too. It hides your complexity, your depth, your time, your needs. They stop asking if you're okay because you've trained them to believe you always are, that you don't need anything, that you're just the strong one. But even strong people break when they're carrying too much. Now, I get it. You might say, but I don't want to seem selfish, or I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. That's kind, that's noble. But let me tell you something. It's not selfish to have limits. It's self-respect. And if someone truly values you, they'll understand. People who get offended when you set boundaries are the same people who benefited when you had none. Your time is not disposable. Your energy is not endless. And your presence should never be treated like background noise. It's a gift, one that deserves recognition. So what can you do? Start by pulling back, not out of spite, but out of self-awareness. Stop answering every call the moment it comes in. Stop saying yes when you're mentally or emotionally exhausted. Start letting people wait. Let them feel your absence. Let them reach out first. Let them earn the access they've gotten so freely. Not because you want to play hard to get, but because you need to reclaim your space. Your availability should match their effort, not their convenience. Your kindness is beautiful, but it should never come at the cost of your peace. You deserve mutual energy, mutual respect, mutual presence. So next time you feel the urge to drop everything and show up for someone who rarely shows up for you, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of love or out of fear of losing them? Because if it's fear, that's not connection, that's survival. And you weren't meant to survive your relationships. You were meant to thrive in them, protect your energy, move with quiet confidence. And remember this, being less available doesn't make you less kind. It makes you more respected. Let's be real for a moment. One of the hardest things in life is realizing how many times we've let things slide when we shouldn't have. Not because we're weak, but because we wanted to avoid conflict. We wanted peace. We told ourselves, it's not a big deal. Or, they didn't mean it that way. So we stay quiet. We shrug things off. We smile through what hurt us. And over time, we begin to tolerate more than we ever thought we would. But here's what no one tells you. Tolerance without boundaries turns into silent self-betrayal. And that's not kindness. That's slow erosion of your dignity, of your voice, of your self-worth. You see, when you keep absorbing disrespect, whether it's subtle or loud, you begin to train the people around you, not through what you say, but through what you don't say. When someone crosses a line and you say nothing, you just redrew that line further out, and what was once unacceptable becomes normal. What used to offend you now feels like just the way they are, but deep down, you feel it. You feel it every time your stomach tightens when their name pops up on your phone. You feel it when you replay the conversation in your head, wondering if you should have said something. You feel it when your energy is drained after spending time with them. That's your body whispering what your words won't say. You're tolerating too much. And listen, tolerance isn't always about big betrayals. Sometimes it's the small things, the backhanded compliments, the jokes at your expense, the just playing comments that sting, the constant one-sidedness, the subtle dismissals. And every time you ignore it, you chip away at your own standard, not because you don't care, but because you care too much. You care about keeping the peace. You care about the relationship. You care about not being labeled too sensitive or too much. But here's the problem: peace without truth is not peace. It's a performance. And the longer you perform, the more you lose your truth. The more you silence yourself to make others comfortable, the more uncomfortable you become in your own skin. Somewhere along the line, you started believing that being a good person meant enduring everything quietly. But that's not goodness. That's emotional martyrdom. That's you putting everyone else's comfort ahead of your own dignity. Let me tell you something real. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your patience. You are allowed to draw the line. You are allowed to say, "That doesn't sit right with me." You are allowed to remove yourself from spaces where your value is overlooked. When you finally speak up or walk away, people might say you've changed. But you didn't change. You just stopped accepting behavior that never should have been acceptable in the first place. That's not change. That's growth. That's awareness. That's self-respect, waking up after a long sleep. The truth is, some people will only treat you as well as you require them to. And if your silence tells them they can get away with more, they will. Not because they're evil, because they're human. People adjust to the environment you allow. You don't like how they treat you. Change what you tolerate, speak the boundary, enforce it. And if they still won't respect it, let them go. Now, I know this isn't easy, especially if you're used to being the peacemaker, the fixer, the forgiver. But at some point, you have to decide, do I want to be liked by others or respected by myself? That's the shift. That's the moment you stop making excuses for other people's behavior and start protecting your energy. That's the moment you stop staying silent just to keep the relationship and start listening to the relationship you have with yourself. So, if you're sitting here feeling like you've tolerated too much for too long, you're not alone. But you don't have to keep doing it. You get to stop. You get to set the standard now. You get to say, this version of me doesn't live like that anymore. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity, with calm, with confidence, because your peace matters, your voice matters, and it's about time people started acting like it, because you finally do. There's a difference between being liked and being respected, but too many people spend their lives chasing the first while sacrificing the second, and they don't even realize they're doing it. See, being liked feels good in the moment. It's about validation, approval, being accepted in the room, welcomed at the table, praised for being easygoing, agreeable, pleasant. You smile, nod, go with the flow. You keep the peace. You try not to ruffle feathers, even when those feathers are pressing down on your own boundaries. And maybe you were raised to believe that this was the goal, to be liked by everyone, to be the nice one, the helper, the one who never causes a scene, never says no, never disagrees too loudly. You learn that being liked meant being safe. But over time, something starts to feel off. You begin to notice that people laugh with you, but they don't really listen to you. They come to you for favors, but they don't ask how you're doing. They remember you when they need something, but forget you when you need support. And even though you're constantly trying to make others feel comfortable, you're the one walking away feeling small. That's the cost of chasing likable. It often means shrinking yourself down so you fit other people's comfort zones. It means holding your tongue when something doesn't sit right. It means saying yes when everything in your body wants to say no. And after a while, you start to resent it. You start to feel invisible in rooms where you've worked so hard to be seen. That's when you start asking yourself, why do people not take me seriously? Why do they cross my boundaries? Why do they not show up for me the way I show up for them? And the answer is tough, but honest. It's because you've trained them to value your likability more than your limits. You've shown them that being liked matters more to you than being respected. And people pick up on that fast, because here's the truth. Being liked is about who you are to them. Being respected is about who you are to yourself. Being liked is external. It depends on their opinion, their mood, their needs. Being respected, that's internal. That's grounded. It says, even if you don't agree with me, you're going to treat me with care. It doesn't require applause. It requires standards. You don't have to be loud to be respected. You don't have to be mean, harsh, or intimidating, but you do have to be clear. You do have to say, that's not okay with me. You do have to stop over explaining your worth or trying to win people over who already decided how little they'll give you. Respect isn't about being liked. It's about being understood. It's when people know your name and associate it with strength, honesty, and self-control. It's when you walk into a room, and even if no one claps, they know you're not the one to play with. Not because you threaten them, but because your energy communicates, I know who I am, and I don't need your approval to validate it. And yes, being respected might mean some people won't like you. That's okay. You will lose some people when you stop trying to please them, but you'll gain something much more valuable: your self-respect, your peace, your freedom from constantly performing for a standing ovation that never comes. Here's the shift: start being less focused on how people feel about you and more focused on how people treat you. Watch their tone. Watch their consistency. Watch how they act when you finally say no. That will tell you everything. Because at the end of the day, the people who matter won't need you to shrink to fit their comfort zone. They'll respect you for showing up as your full self, clear, honest, grounded. So stop confusing being liked with being respected. You weren't born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be whole, to be real, to walk with quiet confidence that doesn't demand attention, but still commands respect. And when you start doing that, when you stop chasing the illusion of being liked, you'll notice something shift. You'll stop being drained by fake connections and start being empowered by real ones. The kind where you're not just liked, but valued, seen, heard, and most importantly, respected. There's something admirable about being a giver. You care. You show up. You pour into people without them even asking. You're the one who remembers the little things, who checks in, who supports others even when no one's supporting you. And that's beautiful, until it becomes exhausting. Until you look around and realize that all that giving has become a one-way street. That's when it starts to hit you. You're not just giving, you're overgiving. And you're doing it without ever asking for anything in return. Not because you don't need anything, but because somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself it was safer not to need at all. Maybe you learned that asking for help made you a burden. Maybe you thought being low maintenance would make people stay. Maybe you believed that if you just gave enough, cared enough, loved hard enough, eventually people would give it back. But they didn't. They just kept receiving. And now, you feel invisible in a role you never agreed to play, drained from holding up everyone but yourself. Here's what people won't tell you. You can't keep giving to people who never give back and expect to feel whole. That's not kindness. That's depletion. That's self-neglect with a smile on your face. You're pouring from an empty cup and wondering why you feel so resentful. But let me tell you something. You're allowed to require reciprocity. That doesn't make you needy. That makes you human. Relationships, friendships, family, romantic, professional, they're supposed to be mutual. Not perfectly balanced, but mutual. It means effort on both sides. It means presence. It means asking, listening, showing up, not just when it's convenient, but when it counts. And if someone can't meet you halfway, if they only come around when they need something, if the conversation only happens when you initiate it, that's not a connection. That's a transaction. And the longer you stay in transactional relationships, the more you teach people that your love comes with no requirements, that your time is free, that your emotional labor is on demand. Let's be real. You deserve more than that. You deserve to be seen, not just when you're giving, But when you're quiet, when you're tired, when you're the one who needs support, and if the people around you can't, recognize that it's time to stop carrying the entire relationship on your back. Now, some people will say, well, I give because I want to. I don't do it to get something back. And sure, that might be true. But even the most selfless giver has limits. Love without reciprocity leads to burnout. Giving without receiving leads to bitterness. Eventually, your heart starts to close, your trust starts to fade, and you begin to feel like you're not worth the same effort you give. But that's the lie. You are worth it. You've just been giving to the wrong people or giving without boundaries. And boundaries don't mean you love less. They mean you love smarter. They mean you protect your energy. They mean you pause and ask, is this being returned? Is this appreciated? Is this mutual? If the answer is no, then you get to pivot. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to fight for reciprocity. You simply adjust your availability, not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of clarity, from knowing that your time, your love, and your effort are valuable, and they deserve to be treated that way. Start requiring energy that matches yours. Start watching how people respond when you stop overfunctioning. That's when you'll see the truth. Because the right people won't be shocked by your standards. They'll rise to meet them. They'll be the ones who check in without being asked. Who remember your needs. Who give without keeping score, just like you do. And here's the part that matters most. Reciprocity isn't about getting equal back. It's about feeling seen. It's about knowing you're not the only one carrying the emotional weight. It's about being in spaces where your presence is not just welcomed, but valued. So if you've been giving without requiring anything in return, let this be your wake up call. You're allowed to ask for the same love you give. You're allowed to stop pouring into people who only show up with empty hands. And you're allowed to protect your peace, even if that means pulling back. Because at the end of the day, you're not hard to love. You're just done settling for one-sided connections. And that's not selfish, that's growth.